Welcome, my friends, to Paranormal Heart Podcast. Tonight's segment is pre-recorded, streaming on United Public Radio Network 107.7 New Orleans. I'm your host, Kat Ward. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My special guest tonight is my dear friend and paranormal sister, JJRose777. If you recall, JJ was on my Halloween segment, and well, unfortunately, I had to cut it off a little too soon and left you all with a cliffhanger. Both JJ and I had people message us saying that they need a continuation. So you asked for it, and I have delivered. Here is part 2 of JJ's talk about witch trials. Hello, JJ.
Hello, Kat.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. I must apologize to your audience. I do not like cliffhangers, so I apologize sincerely for leaving you with that. But for anyone who hasn't done any research into Nelson Riemeyer, I'm here today to deliver some information.
Awesome. And I have to apologize too, because it was my fault. I was new to the StreamYard thing, and I totally forgot to tell you that I only have an hour. And I had 4 minutes left, and it's like, oh my God, we have 4 minutes left. Can you tell everyone where they can find? And I just had to cut it off so quickly. And I really didn't expect for people to message us and saying, we need more. We need the rest of it. So thank you. Thank you for everyone who's messaged us.
Yes, thank you so incredibly much for your interest. And, this case about Nelson Riemeyer is close to my heart for more than a few reasons. I mean, it did happen in 1928. So this is much more recent than the Salem Witch Trials, right? Happening in the 1600s, or even things that we talked about happening in other time periods. But this one specifically talks about something that I don't feel gets a lot of publicity or press within the paranormal community as much. And in really delving in a little bit more, trying to figure out why that was, I feel like there's a couple reasons with powwow magic. First, because the Pennsylvania Dutch, for the most part, were a pretty secluded and what some of us would call a closed community, meaning outsiders didn't really come in, they didn't really share stuff with outsiders, but also because this was folk magic that was brought over from old-time Europe, that they figured out a way when Catholicism and Christianity became kind of the lay of the land in Europe. These people found a way to keep their traditions going. And by doing that, they had to inculcate things like prayer and Bible verses in with their own magic. And you can actually find that among many different realms today. Santeria, you can also find that with hoodoo. And I know there are other traditions as well that will inculcate Bible verses and a form of active prayer, for instance, into it while they're doing their energetic work. But again, because for a long time it was convert or die, a lot of people had to hide what they were actually doing under the guise of, oh, I'm making this religious, right? So that they wouldn't end up hung or on fire or their entire family killed and accused of witchcraft and put in jail. So with this case in particular, this really revolves around the Pennsylvania Dutch, who are actually German people who immigrated over to Pennsylvania, York County. And back then, again, because it was a more closed community, everyone kind of knew who the powwow practitioners were in the community. There were older ones who were kind of, quote unquote, retiring out just because of age and they weren't as mobile. There was a woman and she was 90 when this whole thing happened. And she was brought up at the trial that ensued after. So I will talk about her. But she was known as a, quote unquote, river witch. And then there was Nelson Riemeyer. And it's kind of interesting. I just want to tell this little interesting thing that happened. So I had found this really great documentary. It's called Hex Hollow, and it's on Prime, so it's free. Anyone can stream it as long as you have Prime. And so I'm watching it, and I had paused it to go outside and actually get my herbs for my Thanksgiving meal that I was preparing. And I was the only one in the house at the time. I had the remote controller on top of something in the house. No one was near it. No one was breathing or touching it or looking at it. And as I'm walking into the house with the herbs, I'm talking to Nelson in my head, and I'm saying, I really want to do you proud, Nelson. I know that you are a wonderful man, and your story has so much to do with things that have happened and could be happening now and potentially could happen in the future. So I really want to do you proud and really talk about who you were and the good works that you did. And Kat, the TV turned on by itself and started playing, and it was a picture of him on the screen.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I took that as instant confirmation that he heard me. And
Yep.
it was really interesting because when I had done a whole bunch of this research before for our first episode, I couldn't find much. But this time around, all of a sudden, I was able to find a whole bunch of stuff, which was wonderful. So thank you, Nelson, up above, for your help. So Nelson Riemeyer was a powwow practitioner, and a powwow practitioner would be akin to someone who is an active prayer energy worker. Sometimes they lay physical hands. Sometimes they just physically use their hands around the person in the energetic energy field, aka aura. They do create physical things that someone can eat and or like a bag that the person can keep with them. So traditionally, it really is witchcraft, but it is for the light side, meaning it's to help people, to heal people, to remove hexes, all the good stuff, right? Help you with your crops, with your home, really, really focused on people being physically ill. And so this man was a bit of a recluse. He did not live in town like everyone else. He had a farm kind of on the outskirts of town, about a half day's journey. And, you know, he never really wanted to hold down a full-time job. He ended up getting married. His wife, you know, when you're an energy person, especially back in the days before phones and cars and email existed, people just showed up randomly when they needed you. And it was all hours of the day. You were on 24/7 because that's your job, right? To be there. And not everyone gets sick at convenient times. We'll just say it that way.
Yeah, true.
So his, you know, he marries his wife and they have a couple children. And she basically gets sick of the fact that A, they live in the middle of nowhere, and then B, there are these random people coming at all times of day and night. She never can count on anything because he might just be whisked away or they might have random company. And also she was very much into conservative religious beliefs. So this energetic, you know, healing for her dabbled too much on the side of potential witchcraft and also just the whispers in town, right? Because back then, even if the person was someone that the majority of people went to for help, there's still that austere of mystery, right? And whispers about, is this person really a witch, etc. Mm-hmm. And because he was a little eccentric, people are going to talk more so. Yeah. And he was a man who did this, right? So his wife, they did not divorce, but she ended up moving closer to town with the kids. And then every week he would actually come and bring his laundry, which she would do, and then give it back. So they still were quote unquote married, but they didn't live together. And to be honest, back in the days when divorce wasn't really a thing as much, they just kind of made do.
Yep.
So Nelson is out there doing good for the community. He's taking calls day or night. He would help people with all manner of things that they needed help with. But this is the 1928, right? We're a year before the Great Depression starts. We're a year and a half before the 1930s with the Dust Bowl era, when things are about to get real gnarly weather-wise. And so there's this other man in town named John Blymeyer. John was not mentally stable, is the best way to put it. Okay. But back then, mental health was not really talked about.
Yep.
And so he was known as a child to have nervous breakdowns. He was known to have irrational anger fits. He would lose jobs consistently as a result of it. And he really couldn't hold down a regular job very well. He ended up befriending a 14-year-old kid who was forced to work because the parents didn't have enough money. And he was just kind of an odd guy because of his mental illness. Mm-hmm. Well, John decides to throw his hat in the ring at powwow magic, but people weren't actively seeking him out because, again, he was so extreme. He would probably be what people would call today as like bipolar or manic depressive, but very severe with his mood swings. And as a result of that, there wasn't a lot of respect and or people just really wanting to go see him. But that was the only way he could really make money because, again, he couldn't hold down a normal job. Well, people aren't flocking to him the way that he thinks they would be, and he's not making all this money. And so he starts getting it in his head that someone has hexed him. And so he starts going around town and asking people, hey, is there anyone that you know who doesn't like me that would put a hex on me? And for the most part, people are thinking no. But he ends up on these one people's farm, and their crops aren't doing well. Their livestock aren't thriving. Neighbors are. And so these people get it in their head that, well, I don't know if someone hexed you, but we have some weird stuff going on with us. So maybe someone hexed us too. Mm-hmm. So then you have the blind leading the blind with the whole, let's, think that everyone's hexing us. It couldn't be a natural phenomenon. It couldn't be our personalities doing this. It has to be somebody else, right? So they end up going around and asking more people about what it is that they think is going on. And then they end up going to a much older woman who is known as the River Witch, and they end up asking her for a reading. Her name was Emma Knopp, or she was also known as Nellie Knoll. And she was very, like I said, this woman was 91 when this happened. So she was very well known within the community as being a practitioner of this and being very, very good at what she did, especially on figuring out who hexed or cursed someone. So she has Blymeyer come in and takes a $1 bill, puts it in his palm, blows smoke over it, and says, when I remove the bill, you will see the face of the person who has hexed you. Well, she pulls the bill away, and there Blymeyer sees Nelson's face. So he is now convinced that Nelson has hexed him. And this was just, cherry on the giant ice cream sundae that he's created in his mind about no one's coming to me. I'm not able to make money. This other family has been hexed by these people. And so again, he starts getting in this other gentleman's head about, no, Nelson hexed me. He hexed you. And the family that was having some of the issues, part of their land ended up butting with a river in between against a portion of Nelson's land. So to them, they could logically make these leaps and jumps that he had hexed them and not any of the neighbors. Later on, by the way, they ended up finding out it was because the water that was coming in and there was a blight on their crops that was not going towards the neighbors, but ended up affecting the neighbors a year and a half later. So there were scientific reasons why it was happening to only them first, but then it started to affect other people after. But when you're in the moment, right, the easiest thing is to go ahead and to blame the witch. Yep. And of course, you have this very eccentric, odd man who lives on his own in the forest. So Blymeyer enlists Hess and then this 14-year-old kid with the last name of Curry. And he says, we need to go to Nelson's house and we need to get a lock of his hair and we need to get his spell book, which some would call a grimoire, some would call spell book, whatever it is. It's basically a book of spells designed by the actual practitioner. And if he gets those two things and burns them and buries them, the hex upon him will go away. So he takes these two guys with him and they go to the house and Nelson invites them in. He gives them food. He's very kind, right, to them. And this is during the day. And so they're sitting there and they're thinking, well, what are we going to do with this man? And how are we going to get his hair in his book? And they end up leaving, right? Because the two other guys kind of chicken out and say, it's best for us to leave. We want to get home in a decent time. Well, as they're slowly walking away, Blymeyer starts telling them and increasing the fabrications more and more about why they need to go in and tie him up, take a lock of his hair, and grab his book.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it's now dark, it's dusk, and they go back to Nelson's home. And Nelson, once again, what do you boys need? Do you want a bed down here for the night? It's probably too long, too dark, too cold to go home. So just come on in, stay here. Again, this is a really wonderful man who's opened up his home to these people. And they come in and they tell him they forgot something. And Nelson's like, well, okay, look for it then. And so the two younger books start looking for this book and they're not able to find it. Well, then Blymeyer basically loses it and ends up hitting Nelson, tying him to a chair, and takes a lock of his hair and is screaming that he needs his book of spells. And Nelson at this point is fighting for his life, is saying, I don't know, I did not hex you. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, please just take whatever you want and go. Mm-hmm. And then one of the men, we don't know which one, I know which one got blamed, but not which one actually did it, because there's a lot of controversy about that, ends up taking a board and hits Nelson in the head. Oh. And at this point, because they're all not well and they're all in the heat of the moment, they think that he's dead. In reality, I think they caught his temple and he passed out. So at this point, they end up going through everything in the house. They're not able to find this mysterious book. And they think, okay, well, we've killed him, so we now need to set the house on fire to cover up the murder. And then
it's just escalating.
Yes, it went real quick, real far.
Yeah.
So they end up setting the house on fire. But again, these aren't the brightest crayons in the crayon box. So when they do it, they don't basically put whatever accelerant all over. They think it's a wood house, it'll just burn on its own. They only put a little bit near Nelson's body. Well, at this point, they leave. And Nelson wakes up because he was alive. He was just knocked out. And as he wakes up and is trying to squelch the flames and get out of the restraints in this chair that he's tied to, he ends up flipping over and his body basically snuffed out the flames. So he ends up dying of smoke inhalation, right? He does end up passing away. But his body basically snuffs out the flames. Well, Nelson doesn't live with anyone. And the fire at this point wasn't big enough for anyone to see. They probably just thought he had, a chimney going. And so no one checks on him for a few days. Well, at this point, the boys have already gone back to their prospective homes and they're kind of freaking out, but no one says anything. And after a couple days, someone is trying to figure out where Nelson is. For whatever reason, he's not answering the door for his normal appointments. And someone ends up sending out the police. And they open up the house and find Nelson dead. And it's been a few days. And they find the small fire damage. And they figure out this is not a natural death, obviously. And it was quite fortuitous, though, how Nelson passed. Because if it had been a home fire, no one would have known about the crime. So they end up finding out someone actually did this. And so they go through town and they start trying to ask people, like, who do you know that saw Nelson recently? Well, before the boys went to Nelson's home, they asked his wife on the way, do you know where Nelson is? And she says, I'm sure he's at home. And then they went. So when they got to the wife to let her know, unfortunately, your husband's passed away, but it wasn't natural. Do you know anyone who's, went to go see him? She tells him these 3 men came by. And that's basically what opened the case. So when they go to Blymeyer, he admits freely, yeah, I went there. I went there with these 2 other guys. I killed him because he put a hex on me. And the police arrest him, and he's incredulous as to why they would arrest him, because in his mind, he's thinking, I did the right thing. This man hexed me, and now you're arresting me? It makes no sense. I was self-defense. Mm-hmm. And then they arrest the other 2, the other man, as well as the kid, unfortunately. Again, he's 14. Not really in charge of his own decision-making faculties.
No.
And, and the kid immediately just starts crying and tells everything that happened. And thank God, right? Because this kid at least is doing the honorable thing, as well as saying, like, listen, I was asked to go. He asked me to go. He said this whole thing. I didn't understand we were going to kill him. Like, I feel awful about the whole situation. And this whole case ensues. And when it gets to the point that they're actually going to be charged for murder, the judge does not want any talk of witchcraft being brought into this at all, because he knows this is going to make it a media circus.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So, yeah. And so they deliberately try to quash and quell any talk about witchcraft in the defense. So the main one, Blymeyer, is going with the insanity defense. And then the other 2 are going with he asked us to go and things spiraled out of hand, right? Mm-hmm. Well, 3/4 of the way into the trial, in order for his defense to work, someone brings up, well, yes, it's because I thought he hexed me. And that explodes into a giant media firestorm. You have people coming from all the way from the West Coast to cover this tiny little town and this court case now. And it's splashed on the headlines, witchcraft inspired murder. And it becomes this awful media circus. And basically they all get life, all 3 of them. There's some other stuff that ends up happening where it ends up coming out that the public defender was actually a friend of the judge. And they did it that way in order to make sure that witchcraft wouldn't be coming out in the trial, even though it ends up coming out. And that ends up years later earning them a new trial for Blymeyer, who then the other 2 both get 10 years. Blymeyer gets, I think he served about 12 years total for this. And all of them, the young boy in court, basically a mockery is made, and they try to say that his mother sent him because she was poor and wanted money to go commit this crime. And they lambast the mother in court openly, saying, you sent your son to go be a murderer because you believe in something as silly and superstitious as magic. Mm-hmm. And, the poor mom, she's already a single mom of a 14-year-old boy. He's not able to go to school because they don't have enough money in order to feed each other. So he's working, there was so many ugly things that happened in this. But that being said, they end up pretty much getting out after 10 to 12 years. And they're all released back into society, but their families all live in this small town. Everyone knows what happened, and it becomes an absolute blight on their families. And one of the boys ends up dying when he's only 48 years old of a heart attack. He basically became a farmer, just kind of lived a quiet life. One of the other ones ended up doing paintings and trying to make some good of his life. Blymeyer, though, he did feel bad later, but by then they had figured out mentally something was going on with him and they were giving him medication.
Mm.
And that's when he finally realized, oh, I wasn't hexed. It was partially some of my own actions that caused all these things for me to accuse this kind man and end up killing him, right, of hexing me. And this might seem like just an interesting story to some of you. I highly recommend, if you're interested in a documentary, Hex Hollow. Again, it's on Prime. You can watch it. It goes into the family members. It talks a lot about powwow magic. There are books written on this. You can actually get the court transcriptions as well.
Oh, really?
Both trials, yes. The first one where it starts to derail, and then the second one, it also talks about the court system as well, of how they try to hide certain things and not allow proper defenses. And there's a lot to this. But I think a lot of the reason, Kat, that I wanted to bring not only this up, but also the Salem Witch Trials and some of the other ones in Scotland and in Canada that I brought up in our last episode, is simply for the fact for people to understand that this stuff is still happening. And yes, this case was in 1928, but if I were to read you the more recent cases in which people say it's okay that I murdered someone because I believe that they were a witch or witchcraft was involved,
Yep.
it would get into too gruesome, A, for your show, but B, I would just start crying. And the other thing is that this is not just happening in America and in Canada. This is happening all over the world still.
Yep.
There are places where if you are suspected of being a witch, you are killed, and it's publicly condoned to do so. And this is not, oh, these are super religious places. Yes, most of them are ruled by very religious places, or they're a bit rural, and so they kind of live by their own rules. But this stuff still happens. It's 2024. And with some of the religious movements lately of them not understanding their own book, I mean, in the Bible alone, it talks about magic numerous times, which is a point as to why I believed that in the Old Testament, magic was outlawed, because everyone was doing it. And they needed to subdue and suppress the people. So therefore, don't do this, right? Things are getting too out of hand. But someone like Nelson today is someone that we would find on Main Street doing readings or doing Reiki sessions or doing energy attunement of any kind. Nelson today, if he had gone to school, could have been a chiropractor. He could have been a homeopathic doctor. And this is why I bring this up so emphatically, is because I want people to understand that it's very easy for you to say, oh, that wouldn't happen today. You sure about that? Because I have people who have told me things that they've been accused of. And it's the tiniest little thing. I mean, to sit there and think that you're going to, whether it's hex or reverse hex someone else because you think they've done something to you, this is why a lot of the older types of magic require you to really look in the mirror first before you wantonly just blow energy back at people. Because a lot of the times it's something that you yourself are doing to attract that.
Yep. Just last night, my husband and I were watching YouTube, and there was this ad that popped up, and it was talking about don't do witchcraft, don't hang dream catchers, which I have a bunch, don't do Reiki, don't do all this healing because it's evil. And I was just like, what? Yep. That's still out there.
There are people who will tell you that yoga is evil and invokes demons.
Yeah.
And yet, everything I know about yoga and the Hindu faith is so positive and beautiful. And I'm not saying that there aren't ways and things that people do that can be invoking things in. Yes, that exists.
Yeah.
But there is a certain level of understanding in order to have something like that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are listening to someone tell you something is evil and you have not read it on your own, you have not studied it, you have not looked it up on your own and seen, yes, indeed, this is what the scriptures are saying, please, please, please double check. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have heard a sermon or heard someone tell me what's evil, what's not evil, what's allowed, what's not within Christian faith or even some other major religions' faith. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I can almost quote chapter and verse as to where it says the exact opposite of that. And then they say, well, my pastor told me so. Okay, but have you looked into your pastor? Because I can tell you there are a lot of people out there saying that they are Christians and they are pastors of some pretty big congregations.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it in their eyes that they're not working for the light.
Yes. Yes. I just saw this gentleman the other day. I had to take a family member to emergency a couple of weeks ago, and there was the waiting room was just full as usual. And this gentleman came in, and they were all part of. They weren't Christian. I don't know. Well, they weren't Catholic. I think they called him. I can't remember what they called him, but anyways, the energy coming off of him, it was just like, he is not kind. He is like, no. And you could just see it in his eyes. And he's telling everybody, okay, let's have a prayer so you guys can heal. But I could just feel in those words that this is not right. It just, the words, the prayers were right, but the intention behind it just did not feel right. And I mentioned it to my husband later on. I'm like, yeah, I really didn't have a good vibe from that minister. And I'm not saying that all ministers are like that. This particular individual was, because I've met a lot of them, and they're very, very kind and had good energy and everything. But this guy, no.
No, and so I'm not sure if you guys have it as much where you live as we do down here, but years ago I was going to a concert. It was like Madonna, right? It wasn't even anything that dramatic.
Yeah.
And there's these people standing out front of the place where the concert's going to be held. I forgot that word all of a sudden. That's great. Well, it's not a theater. It's a whatever. And so they're standing out front. And they have bull horns, and they're literally standing on a milk crate with these signs that say things that I will absolutely not repeat. Putting in words what God loves and what God hates. And then they are absolutely speaking through these mega horns, the most vile, putrid things that I have heard under the guise of they're right with God and everyone else is going to HE double hockey sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm standing there and I'm in shock, right? Because I've never seen this before. I mean, I've heard that this stuff happens, but I didn't think where I live it was happening. And so, of course, me being me, I try to go up to talk to one of these people. And
oh no.
I was told to stop by my friends, and I was like, no. So I went up, and so literally they're just talking nonsense. And so I start bringing up a couple things that Jesus had said directly from scripture in the Bible. And then they proceeded to call me a heathen, and then they turned their backs on me and just kept going. Ooh. And so I didn't really know much about this group of people, but apparently they're gross, and they send people deliberately all over to do this stuff, and they're brainwashed. So if you go up to them and you disagree with them, or you try to bring up parts of the Bible that don't agree with what they're doing, they will physically turn their backs on you and ignore you, because they're just there to spout their ridiculousness. And it is awful to say that another human being, because of the way that they were born, is an abomination of God that created them. Shows me that you do not understand the true comprehension of source, spirit, God, universe.
Yep.
it doesn't make any sense to me. And to espouse hate and rhetoric such as they were, merely because people are just going to attend a concert or people are existing. And then now, 20 years later, we have people singing Madonna's Like a Prayer in church, which, don't get me wrong, great song, love it.
Oh,
But they don't understand the backlash when that song came out, of all the controversy about that. And
yeah.
It's hilarious to me that people just don't even bother to look up history or like why these things have existed for so long. I was talking to someone about something having to do with politics the other day, and they were like, yeah, well, we love this country. And I'm like, that's interesting because America's been in a war with them for, this many years. And they were like, no, I thought we got along with them. I'm like, would you like to crack a history book at all? And then, but that's not all like the public education system. It also comes down to, because I'm a little older and I lived through a lot of this stuff, and or my parents did, my grandparents did, and it was talked about openly within my household.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a household where it didn't matter if you were 6 months old or 12, you're listening when the adults talked, because that was part of growing up. And I did. And so I heard these things. And so, maybe myself, I have a deeper understanding and grasp as to history just because I lived through more and I understand it and it was relevant in our household. But understand what it is that you are believing in or standing up for and the history of it before you just wantonly say and do things.
Yep. Do your own research.
I think it's even beyond do your own research. It's also cognitively questioning things as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I could imagine there would be groups of people today that would say the Salem Witch Trials were justified, or that Blymeyer was justified in killing Nelson because they're witches. Well, I've got news for you. They didn't kill witches. They killed women and men who didn't want to convert or die, or that they were jealous and tried to get a land grab or just move people out of the way who were quote unquote inconvenient for their nefarious purposes. So when you look into someone's true heart as to what their intentions were, as to why they made these accusations or why they did what they did and how they got other people on board with them under the guise of, oh, this is for religion or this is what's right, no one stopped to think and say, this isn't right. Why are you killing people based off what 12-year-olds are saying?
And animals too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like pets. Yeah.
And then the people who did stand up and think, like my ancestor, Elizabeth, she then ends up getting hung for standing up during the Salem Witch Trials saying, why are you listening to a 12-year-old girl? She's making this up.
Yeah.
And then they hung her. And in Nelson's case, originally, all these guys got life. And then because of this other sham trial that they allow all this media in, they end up only 10 and 12 years served for killing a man and trying to cover it up. And yes, nowadays, we would probably have, mental health resources, and that would definitely, he would have gone to a facility and gotten help. They didn't have that back then.
Yeah.
Thank God we have those now. But even that is having people turn face on it, saying, no, I don't have a mental health issue. I just need to take this herb, or I'm religious and you don't understand because you're not part of my religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very slippery slope, right, of what you're going to allow and condone under the guise of my pastor told me so.
Yep. It's kind of scary.
It is scary. And it's especially scary for people like myself and you, who we do have these gifts and that we do want to help other people. And we want to make sure that other people know more about this so that they can make their choices properly, right? But then someone could very easily turn on us and say that we're evil because of whatever misplaced belief or notion. I mean, if anyone thinks that being psychic or being able to astral project or have dream prophecy is evil, I would really encourage you to listen or read would be the best, the entire book of Daniel from the Bible, because that's exactly what Daniel was. He was a psychic. He was he was able to astral project. He was a dream interpreter. I mean, then you have Joseph with, he was also a dream prophecy. And it goes on and on and on throughout the Bible, but yet somehow today it's not allowed.
Yeah. I have a dear friend who was also a guest on the show. I won't mention his name because I don't have permission. But he grew up, he has abilities, and he was raised the son of an evangelical minister. And this friend of mine is also gay. So growing up, he had to learn quickly how to use different wording so his church would accept him because of his gifts and everything. It's like, oh, the angel sent you the information. He quickly learned, like I said, but had he not been savvy and used the lingo of the church, he probably would have been like exiled from his town. And that was just, like now.
And that is so disheartening to me as well, is that someone has to hide the majority of who they really are and what they're seeing, hearing, understanding, just to appease and get acceptance from other people. That makes me very, very sad. But unfortunately,
and he's a sweet man too. Like he's amazing. He's so nice.
Well, of course. I mean, I know a lot of people like that who have been ousted from their family, community, due to having a spiritual awakening. And all of a sudden you start realizing you're bucking the system because the system isn't truthful. The system is not working, right? So therefore something has to change. And usually it's within you. You have to change in order to see that does not work for me anymore. But, there's another person that was very famous for having God talk to her directly, right? Or an angel, whoever it was. And as a woman, she ended up coming out and speaking about it and actually won the war for her country and then was burned at the stake. Anyone know who that was?
Oh, I know.
Joan of Arc.
Yep.
That's another one. And it's going down these rabbit holes of seeing how many amazing people have been killed for their gifts. And yet, super helpful the entire time. Helped them win a war. But back then, there is absolutely no way that a woman could get messages or talk directly to God or an angel because that ousted the Pope. And so then they had to burn her. And all she had to do was say, no, I didn't hear that. I made it all up. And she would have been fine. But she stuck to the truth.
Good for her for sticking to her guns, but what a tragic ending.
It is. And it's happened for so many. That's also what happened within the Salem Witch Trials. None of those people were witches. None of them were practicing, actual dark witchcraft. All of them were average, wonderful people within their community who were trying to stand up and say, this is absolutely bonkers. Do you guys not see the conspiracy that's happening right now? Like they're trying to take these people out because they have a grudge or because they're jealous and they want their land. This isn't real.
My mother had, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I was going to say my mother had, I think it was her grandmother. I can't remember if paternal or maternal, but she had a grandmother who was a midwife, and she got struck by lightning twice and survived. And of course, they called her witch in the community, but they didn't. They left her alone, thankfully, But all she was a midwife. She'd go out in the forest, get herbs and things like that, help with deliveries, and like I said, got hit by lightning twice and survived. And they're like, yeah, something's not right with that woman. Well, it
Wow.
happens. Yeah.
First of all, that's amazing that she was hit twice and lived.
Yeah, I know.
There was a really fascinating case about a man who was hit. It's Guinness Book of World Records. I forgot how many times, but I want to say it's like over 15 or 20.
Holy cow.
It might even be over 100, but they started to test him and they found that his body was able to conduct the energy different. He was able to like ground it out. And there was another man in India who the same thing. You could hook him up to a car battery and he would be able to channel the energy out.
Wow.
Very
That's
fascinating.
amazing.
I mean, our bodies are fascinating things, right?
They are, yep. I find it amazing whenever people do survive lightning strikes and they have some pretty cool scars of like the lightning on. It looks pretty cool, but
yes,
damn, that must have hurt.
My husband's uncle has this beautiful thing. It was hanging up, and I just thought someone had wood etched it. Mm-hmm. It was a piece of wood when they were doing construction back in the 50s or 60s that they had left out during a storm, and it was hit by lightning, and it looks like a tree. It's beautiful. I thought someone sat there and hand etched it.
No way.
But it was, so what they did is they just cut the plywood around that where it was hit, and they hung it up. And all this time I've been thinking it's a painting.
That's funny. Mother Nature is amazing, though.
Truly, truly amazing. Truly
destructive
amazing.
And beautiful and
all of the things.
Yes, indeed. It's really neat. I don't know if you've ever seen this on social media. It was going around everywhere a few years ago. This person, it was a walking trail. People would be biking and jogging, and this one person's walks by. He gets hit by lightning. He drops. He gets up, shakes it off, takes a couple of steps, gets hit by lightning again, and he drops. But you can see he's still alive. It's just like, how? How?
Wow.
That poor guy.
I'm not even able to wrap my head around that. I like looking at lightning. I so rarely see it. But yeah, the thought of all that voltage, I've got enough going on in my nervous system. I don't need a whole bolt of lightning going through it.
Right? Good grief.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So thank you, Kat, for allowing me to talk more about Nelson and his experience and just his existence of being such a kind man and helping others.
Mm-hmm. It's my pleasure. Again, I apologize to you and the audience for forgetting to tell you I had an hour now that I'm with UPRN. And it just didn't dawn on me in the beginning, and thankfully it was someone I knew and not a stranger, because I was mortified with you. It's just like, I felt so bad.
Oh, girl, it's me.
I know, but still, it's just, now I know, it was a learning curve, but yeah, I really appreciate you coming back. And I appreciate the listeners again and viewers for messaging both JJ and I saying that was quite the cliffhanger. We need to have a part 2. So thank you.
Thank you all for caring so much about Nelson. It means a lot to me. I honestly, power magic, there is a German word for it and I'm not going to pronounce, but knowing that this exists and just understanding that part of rich history that was kept alive. And again, even though they call it different things and they try to put it under the auspice of, this is Christian, it's still wonderful that some things made it through the dark times and the dark ages and the inquisitions.
Light always finds a way to maneuver through the darkness. It might take a while.
Does. Yes.
We still have a few minutes, but before I have to cut you off, where can the listeners find you?
I am JJRose777 across the board. That's my YouTube channel. I have the regular videos. I have playlists set up for anyone who is curious about different aspects. I have one for paranormal investigators, one for spiritual awakenings, and one for a little bit more advanced, and a couple others in there that I have my instructionals as to like how to actually do this. Everything on there is free. I'm not monetized. So if you get commercials, I apologize. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I don't do a whole heck of a lot on TikTok, but I do have a couple videos on there. Just little small tutorials on things that I feel like when I have more time, I'll be doing a couple more of those. But just little tips of little things that you can do that are really, really simple so that you don't have to go pay someone hundreds of dollars to do it on your behalf, and also so that you can learn how to do it on your own.
You do have a great YouTube channel. It's been helpful. You have so much information for people. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. I try to only put videos out that have information with substance. So I am not putting things out on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. It's very, when spirit strikes me and says, okay, you need to talk about this, that's when I put things out. I'm never going to ask people to like and subscribe. If this information hits you and you want to learn more, you have a resource, but it's not a popularity contest. If you want to communicate with me, if you have questions, I'm here. I'm happy to help where I can, or at least I can refer you to something, right, that will help you better on your way. If I'm not for you, I'm okay with that. I really just look at this work as this is something that I want to do in order to give back to the world, because I don't have kids of my own. All these years and lineage ends pretty much with me. And so I'd rather give it out to the world in a way that whether I'm active or not, it's there. And at least people have a trusty resource. I'm not trying to sell anything, right? Like I'm not writing a book. I better not be, because I haven't started. So
you never know.
Maybe. But no, I want somebody out there to have absolute information with no, what's the word that I'm looking for? Kat, help me out with words today.
Yeah.
No motive behind it. Yeah. That's the word. Thank you. So
I did nothing.
Exactly. I mean, well, you thought that helped.
Okay.
I apologize. It's been a long couple of weeks for me.
It has been for you, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, just a place where there's no motive. I'm not selling anything. I'm not, I don't have a religion or a cult, like none of that, right? I literally want people just to be able to get answers and really to empower themselves. That's really what I'm all about. Find it within yourself. Once in a while, when you're just starting into this, or if you've reached one of those parts where it's like, what do I do now? It's kind of nice to have somebody else say, hey, what have you tried to think about it this way? Or have you tried this? And just be able to get that organically without someone saying, oh, but in order to get the answer, pay $9.99 for my whatever. Yeah. And no shade to people who are out there and that's their hustle. I get it. Everyone needs to make a living. This obviously is not my full-time job. So I do this literally on this small amount of free time that I have, but I just wanted to do something in order to try to give back to the world that has given me so much.
And another reason why I like your channel is you give so much information, but it's not inundated and it's not like a sensory overload. You give enough information. You explain everything so well. So yeah, please check out her YouTube channel.
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, and again, I finally found out how to make playlists, so I tried to be very organized in there. These are for beginners. These are for more advanced. This is the instructionals. This is for people who just want to hear some of my weird stories, and I've got a ton of those. But
you do. Just for the audience, you've probably heard me talk about JJ and Tim Sudano, when they first investigated for the first time together. JJ is the one where they went into this location and JJ asked, "What do you want me to do?" And Tim just said, "Nuke it." And that's exactly what she did. She just nuked the negative entities and energy that was there, and people actually felt like a blast. Like it was amazing. So this is the lady.
That's me. Yeah, yep. Tim has been my paranormal investigation partner. He started our paranormal group, and I am the psychic specialist. But again, been super blessed with that. In that situation, we not only are partners, but we really, really care about each other. Like, we're really good friends. We're like family. Yep. And having that trust and respect for each other as well also makes things so much easier.
Oh yeah, if you don't have trust with your teammates, it's just not going to work out.
Agreed. I've seen it happen. Don't want to be in that position ever.
No, it doesn't end well for everyone.
No, it does not.
Yeah. And if you've probably heard me talk about the Fantastic Five, for those of you who are listening and watching, she is one of the Fantastic Five as well. So yeah, my paranormal sister.
Yes, my paranormal sister. Thank you again, Kat, so incredibly much. Your show is wonderful. Pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for all of your success and everything that you've been doing. And just keep on doing it. Keep on being a bright light in a sometimes dim world.
I appreciate you so much.
You too.
So hang tight. I'll say goodbye to the audience, and then maybe we can chat for a couple of minutes after if you have a minute.
Sure thing.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this without. Okay, so thank you to my special guest tonight, JJRose, and UPRN 107.7. Oh my God, I forgot how to say that. New Orleans. And remember, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, subscribe. And to be a guest on the show, if you want to just say hello, or if you want to buy some Paranormal Heart merchandise, such as this nice Paranormal Heart mug, drop me an email at paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Much love to you all. Until next time. Oh, sorry. I had some things pop up there. I didn't know what it was. So until next time, take care of each other. Bye.